Hello, this is Barry Wolfe with Marcus and Millichap. Excited for our next episode of Wolfe Bites. And I've got on here with us today Jaime Michelle Cain, who is a prominent real estate attorney in Rochester, New York. Jaime, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Jaime, obviously my focus is largely on the retail sector, retail shopping centers, single tenant net lease retail. Your focus, I mean, you certainly touch upon other areas, but you're really, a big part of your business, I understand, is I guess on the multifamily side. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So what do you, I mean, obviously what we're dealing with right now crosses all product sectors across the economy. What are you seeing, any impact, kind of how this is impacting, and what's the results as it relates to the multifamily sector?
Sure. So multifamily is very much affected by this. Obviously, housing being one of the most important things that could happen in a pandemic because people are being told to stay home. What we're seeing is, however, because of so many people being unable to work or laid off or reduced hours, that people are unable to pay their rent as a trend in full. And so in April, there was across the state of New York, on average, a 25 to 30% reduction in the amount of rent collected by landlords. So we are going into May, where there are talks of a rent strike, and that is what's weighing heavily on the landlords as well as tenants in the state.
It's interesting, a rent strike. So is this kind of coming up via just grassroots social media type thing, or how is this being formulated by, I mean, I guess the tenants are all individual, just families and people?
Sure. Actually, this is very political in the state. AOC is actually participating and working with one of the tenant associations that is statewide. And so it appears on social media, they are holding press conferences. They have held virtual dance parties to encourage tenants who cannot pay their rent to cancel the rent. And some are taking a stance that they're going to stand in solidarity with their buildings, and even if they can pay their rent, not to pay the rent. So it's a very statewide, mainly out of New York City right now, but it is spreading. There are buildings in our area that have been graffitied with rent strike, May payday.
Wow.
In the Capital District as well, in our Capital District up here in Albany, there have been clients of mine who have gotten email correspondence that, from a tenant encouraging other people. There are pamphlets being all over the buildings not to pay. And we worry what that impact has on the ability of small business landlords specifically to continue to operate as of June.
I've not been hearing that. Again, I'm not as attuned to the multifamily side like you are. That's got to be scary as heck for landlords. I mean, is the basis of this largely, I mean, I'm sure some of these tenants, and maybe it's a big portion of them, literally are having some real challenges right now, like everybody. But do you get a sense, is at least part of this just folks taking advantage? I mean, obviously there's been stimulus checks from the government that are to help people, frankly, in part to pay rent, pay for food. What's the basis of this?
Yeah, so that's what we struggle with, because there has been help. And in fact, some of the tenants are actually, or workers, I should say, are actually making more money now than they would otherwise because of the supplement from the federal government. So, we're hearing if it's a choice, some of the rhetoric that you read on these social media sites is if it's a choice between food and housing, it's food. But, when we look at the realities of that, how much does food cost? It certainly doesn't cost the value of a stimulus check, hopefully. And so it's a concern that there is some manipulation or some guidance down a wrong path for the landlords, especially in the coalition I run, which is Under One Roof. We are made up of landlords and tenants. And so my biggest concern in this is education to tenants. We have a statewide eviction moratorium that goes through June 20th. What we are hearing is there is a host of people who are confused by the word moratorium. They feel that that means rent forgiveness, or that rent is somehow not owed or is not going to be owed until June. The governor has come out and he has stated, rent is a contractual obligation, but we are still hearing from people that they don't believe rent's owed. And so they're spending this money. We have clients in Rochester saying, you know, I have never seen so many 55-inch TVs moved in the last week. And that is a concern, because at the end of this eviction moratorium, my fear is we see this overflow of people getting evicted because they were led down a message path from some tenant associations that, frankly, it's irresponsible at this point.
I mean, that's concerning. I mean, you make a great point. If it's literally these folks thinking, this is a party, I don't have to pay rent, I'm on unemployment, I'm collecting more money than I ever made, and I don't. It's, you got to be careful how you say this, but I mean, but if they're buying 55-inch TVs in place of paying the rent, that is concerning. I mean, I think a lot of folks.
Right.
I mean, maybe part of it is the tenants thinking this big bad rich landlord. And I saw a post recently, and it was interesting, referencing every dollar of rent that is collected. It was specifically targeted on multifamily. It's on average 9 cents of every dollar goes figuratively in the landlord's pocket, for lack of a way to put it, a profit. But 91 cents is operating expenses. So, and that's assuming the rent's paid.
Right, exactly. Many of our landlords don't even take home a salary in a given month. And so, that perception of greedy landlords, that's what we have to try and demystify, because what they don't realize is, taxes, especially in the state of New York, make up about 35% alone. And then you've got, your mortgage and your water and sewer and things like that are, that's just fixed costs. And then you're looking at, keeping up with your 1099 contractors or your employees that work for you, your leasing staff. And so these landlords, their margin of profit is very little. And at the end of the day, they will ensure everybody else is taken care of before they can take any money home to pay their own mortgages. And, we keep hearing landlords have been, mortgage forgiveness. And that's just not the case on commercial mortgages.
Wow, that's something. And obviously, I mean, to be able to maintain these properties, which, I mean, we talked offline before. I mean, you said maintenance has actually gone up, or maintenance requests, because people are living, they're in their houses instead of 2 hours a day awake. I mean, other than sleeping, they're in them 24 hours a day now. So maintenance requests have gone up. So if you're not collecting the rent and that same tenant is calling you, come fix the toilet, fix this, fix that, that's problematic, obviously.
Yeah, that, and coupled with, when someone tests positive in a unit, as we were speaking offline before, there are concerns that landlords are not able to get the proper PPE equipment to go in and have their own staff do any kind of maintenance work, and that work still needs to be done. We've kind of told clients, go ahead and weed out what's essential from an emergency, in a non-emergency situation, so that you're only going into a unit where someone is tested positive or is isolating or quarantined to make sure it's a true emergency, but those continue to exist. So they have to hire third-party vendors that are added cost as well.
Wow, that's something. So now I appreciate you've raised some real issues and thoughts that I was not attuned to on the multifamily side in particular. So Jimmy, one last quick question for you, kind of shifting subjects a little bit. Obviously, it's been a challenging period, both personally and professionally, for really everybody. We're all dealing with this, but from a positive front, anything you've taken from this that you've learned or will be a lesson for you going forward that you might be adopting and helping you as you move forward?
Yeah, so from a real estate perspective, I think one of the things that has taught me, and as as a partner of a firm and considerations going forward, I don't know that the cost and the overhead of having an office or having a large office is necessary only. I think we were obviously not prepared technologically to the extent we needed to be. And now I think this has shown we pulled it together really fast. A lot of people are doing what you and I are doing, connecting people across state lines. And I think it's an absolute awesome resource to now know that you don't need to be in the office to connect with people in different areas. And hopefully, I guess my hope is that we continue to be more involved with people outside of our areas so that we can educate ourselves on trends and what the next wave of the next real estate deal is going to look like. And I think that's helpful.